Contrary, if any, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. I have received notice from the First and Deputy First Minister that they wish to make a statement. Before I call the Deputy First Minister, I remind members that they must be concise in asking their questions, not an opportunity for debate or long introductions. That won't be allowed. Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The First Minister and I wish to inform members that following the unanimous agreement to the draft programme for government by the Executive on Thursday, the Executive Office will today launch a public consultation. The draft programme for government outlines the Executive's bold ambition for Northern Ireland. It is different from what has been attempted in the past. It is reflective of the realities we face today, but it is also ambitious for the future. It is also realistic about the financial position we find ourselves in and the shortened mandate in which we operate. We make no apology for being ambitious. We want to build on our reputation as a great place to live, work, study, invest and visit. We want to build on the fact that we are global leaders in key sectors such as cyber, fintech, advanced manufacturing and health and life sciences. And we want to continue to invest in our young people so that we can continue to have a young, dedicated and highly skilled workforce. Our aim is to change the lives of our people and communities for the better. To deliver on this aim, the programme for government contains 9 priorities. These are the immediate priorities which we will work to this year and throughout the duration of this mandate. They are to grow a globally competitive and sustainable economy, to deliver more affordable childcare, to cut health waiting lists, ending violence against women and girls, better support for children and young people with special educational needs, to provide more social, affordable and sustainable housing, safer communities and protecting Lough Neagh and the environment, and the reform and transformation of public services. We must all focus on delivering this programme together for everyone. We know that there are challenges, but there are opportunities. With our plan, we have a way forward. It provides a roadmap for people, organisations and departments. The programme for government provides a basis for transformational change in the things that really matter. I look forward to us, the Executive and this Assembly, working together to make a real difference. The scale of the challenges we face requires new thinking and structures. A missions-based approach will help us to measure and prioritise our work. These missions are people, planet and prosperity, and they are underpinned by a cross-cutting commitment to peace. When it comes to people, we have some of the highest levels of life satisfaction in Europe, but not everyone here is able to have a positive experience of life. People from more deprived areas are more likely to suffer from poorer physical and mental health, for example. We need to invest in people and ensure that they are supported to succeed and prosper. We want everyone to reach their full potential. The Planet mission focuses on the natural environment. It is vital to everyone's health and well-being, both now and in the future. We are all very aware of the increasingly evident biodiversity crisis, as seen, for example, in Lough Neagh. The Prosperity mission considers our economic performance. While it has improved dramatically in the past 25 years, it still lags behind where it could and should be. Our GDP per capita remains stubbornly low, and this is particularly true outside of Belfast. We need to make sure that we are building the skills needed to attract investment that can grow our economy and benefit workers everywhere. In terms of peace, we want to build on the successes of the past 26 years to make sure our peace is lasting, meaningful and prosperous for everyone here. By focusing on people, planet and prosperity, we will shape a fairer and more peaceful society. We know that equality of opportunity and good relations are central to this goal, supporting our commitment to safer communities. A key feature of the new programme is its focus on collaborative working between organisations and groups across the public, voluntary and private sectors. It is also a programme in which individuals and communities can play an active part. The Executive will, therefore, work collectively to deliver this programme and to drive forward work both departmental and sectoral boundaries. We will also be tracking performance regularly and publishing annual reports on the progress we are making so that everyone can understand the impact we are having. To improve the lives of people here, we need to deliver real change, and the Programme for Government provides us with a framework to deliver that change as an executive. Mr. Speaker, we are determined to find solutions. We are determined to take action to ensure our communities have access to the life opportunities they deserve. We are determined to make this place we can all be proud of to call home. Mr. Speaker, we are determined to deliver for the public. The consultation will provide people here with an opportunity to consider the programme and provide their views on it. We can only have an effective plan for Northern Ireland if we are able to hear from those it is most likely to impact. That's why it is important as many people as possible share their views during the consultation process. Our plan is for all of us, and we all have a stake in making it happen. Thank you.
Colin Gilden, or
Can Cola August go with his blessing. Last Kiadara as Ogden Ratches. I want to thank the Deputy First Minister for this statement. This is a significant milestone for the four-party executive, particularly setting out the priorities of a draft PFG for the rest of the mandate. My question is, are you, and how confident are you that these draft PFG commitments will be delivered?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, and thank the member for her question. This is the stage where we want to listen to people about the priorities, but in putting together this draft programme for government, we have been out and listening to many, many people, and we believe that this document, that this draft, represents the key issues that matter most to people. And those are the issues that they want us to make progress on. I am very confident that there is a shared determination across all four parties in the executive, but certainly with the First Minister and myself, to ensure that we too deliver. We've made clear that we want this to be an executive that delivers. As we jointly lead that executive, we want to stand and say and give that commitment to everyone throughout Northern Ireland that we have that determination to deliver. And the best way to do that is with a plan, and that is a plan that is put together by listening to people, focusing on the right things, and with that joint determination to make a real and positive difference to people's lives.
Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The constructive opposition has been constructive in calling for a programme for government for months now. We welcome the fact that one has been published, but we've also been clear that the people of Northern Ireland have expected clear targets and clear plans to deliver. On page 27 of the programme for government, there is a chart which lists the increase in patients waiting for a consultant appointment. It went from 70,000 in 2008-09 to 428,000 in the most recent year. But I can't find anywhere in this document a specific target to reduce those times and those waiting lists. Could the Deputy First Minister please point me to where in that document I can find such a target?
First Minister.
Leader of the Opposition will continue in his constructive approach and engage actually with the draft programme for government that's been published today. I'm very pleased by the fact that we've reached this point, that it's a very ambitious programme, that it's a very focused programme, and also I'm very pleased with the fact that now everybody in society gets a chance to shape it into the final document. And alongside that final document, then we will be able to judge our success by how we will value or measure our outcome. I'm very delighted by the fact that we are absolutely committed to being vital, to being open and transparent in terms of the progress that we're going to make. There's nobody in this chamber that underestimates the scale of the challenge that we have in our health service, but the best way we'll fix it is actually working together. It is not just the responsibility of the Department of Health. I believe that all of the executive colleagues are now committed to working together to ensure that we bring down hospital waiting lists, because at the end of the day, this programme for government has to be about making a difference in people's lives. I'm confident actually that we have the plan in which we can turn things around. I'm confident that the whole of the executive is committed to transformation. I'm also very confident that we can be judged along the way when we have the final programme for government. We'll have our wellbeing framework, which I know that the member has only had a chance to look through the document briefly before this session, but you'll see within the document itself that we're going to publish annual reports, so we're going to be able to be measured in terms of what we have set out to achieve, that we will be mark our progress under each of our missions, whether that's people or planet or prosperity, in terms of peace, and that once we have, as I said, that final programme for government, alongside it, will be a whole set of outcomes and indicators, and all of society will be able to judge in terms of how successful the executive has been.
Joanne Bunting.
Statement that you rightly make many references to life, but as Benjamin Franklin said, there are two things that are certain, and that's death and taxes. We're not responsible for taxes, so I want to come to the issue of death, dying and bereavement and its inclusion in the PFG. In the last mandate, this Assembly passed a motion unanimously on a cross-party basis that death, dying and bereavement would be included, because this is a fundamental aspect of life. And could I ask if the Executive Office is open to conversations around the inclusion of such an issue? Thank you.
The First Minister.
The member for a question. I also recognise that the member has been a huge champion for this issue around the dignity in dying and the support that is required, as she has said, in terms of that inevitability for us all. And absolutely, I know that the First Minister and I would be up for having that conversation and to engage with those in the sector around how that is reflected. It is critically important to us that the programme for government does follow that life cycle approach, that it is very much around, as they often said, from the cradle to the grave, but of course, as we know, that important work as well before birth in terms of the support of mothers and how that can impact on the life opportunities and chances for children. So this is a programme for government very much is based on that life cycle approach, and that is a critical aspect of that, and we look forward to engaging with the member on that very important issue.
Speaker, and thank you, First Minister and Deputy First Minister, for meeting with Connie Egan and I this morning to briefly touch upon this. And I'm picking up on the title of the report, Doing what Matters Most. And the Deputy First Minister there mentioned around the consultation process, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of stakeholder groups, voluntary sector groups today will be scouring this for their own area. How are you going to manage the expectations from the consultation process, and how are you going to ensure that people don't feel that their issues don't matter? Thank you.
First Minister.
Thank you for that, and look forward to working with the committee chair and the vice chair and the entire committee as we gather the responses to the consultation. This is a draft document. I think that's a very strong message that we need to send out to wider society today, that we are listening. We are in listening mode. This is very much the basis in which we think we can go out to consultation, but there's no doubt that there will be very constructive comments that will come forward and things that we may be able to include. And where we can't include things, perhaps we can talk that out with those people that are advocating a different approach. But I think that the huge body of work that we have to do to build confidence is actually how we're going to engage. So we're going to come at this over an 8-week consultation period. 12 weeks for the equality impact screening. We're also going to go out actually in person and engage, and we're going to encourage all of our executive ministers to do likewise. So we're very much going out to listen and to hear what people have to say. All of us, in terms of political briefs, will have a role to engage with different sectoral interests, and perhaps everybody, as you say, will be picking over today wanting to see their part, and that's okay, because that's the area that they're interested in. But I think with a combination of in-person, online, encouraging people to engage with the process will actually lead to a very fulsome programme for government at the end of this. And as I said, I think that the committee's role in this is going to be vital to actually make sure that we have the best possible fit-for-purpose programme for government that we can have, because that's our collective will as an executive.
Alan Chambers.
I note and welcome that one of the priorities is tackling health waiting lists. Waiting list initiatives will be the vehicle used to deliver these critical activities. Can the Deputy First Minister confirm that funding to deliver these efforts, such as was sought but refused earlier this year, will now be considered more favourably?
Deputy First Minister.
Member for his question, and as raised, where is the commitment about cutting waiting lists? It's there. It's one of the key 9 priorities. It simply states to cut waiting lists, and that's what we are determined to do. That can't happen without transformation. It can't be the case that continuous additional funds can go in, but outcomes remain not just the same, but actually worse. And therefore, we do need a plan to be brought forward. But we will work with the Health Minister to support that. Where there is a need for additional expertise, we will look to that. We want to move urgently on this. And yes, if indeed this priority is agreed following the consultation, and I believe that it will be agreed, because I feel it is a key and important issue impacting detrimentally on so many people out there, that if it is agreed, then there will be very specific targets included in that. There will be an action plan attached to that, and we will be working very much with the Health Minister in terms of what he can bring forward around supporting year on year real and meaningful progress against this programme for government priority.
Colin Gilder-New.
And I thank the First Minister and Deputy First Minister for the statement, and particularly the emphasis on collaborative working and community playing an active part. And in light of that, would you agree with me that it is essential that all voices input to shape and inform the consultation process?
First Minister.
Yes, and we are asking for as wide a possible engagement with the process as we possibly can. And again, in committee roles and your own role as chair of a committee, we'll have an opportunity to engage with different people from across all different sectors. But we want to hear from the labour movement, we want to hear from civic society, we want to hear from the business community, we want to hear from academia, and of course we want to hear from our young people. And we've done particular work around looking at the impact on young people as part of the programme for government consultation. I would say this to everybody, that this is our plan. This is what's going to make a difference to the lives of our families, ourselves, our families, and wider society. And I think that you know, we need to drive home the message that everybody has a stake in it, everybody has an opportunity to shape it, and that we are very much wanting to engage and to listen. And we want, as I said, the end result to be that we've actually made a difference to people's lives and that we can be judged on that. And I think that we're confident that we can actually improve some of the areas that where we know are in huge difficulties, not least our public services after 10 plus years of austerity. The challenges that we face as a public sector are very much only going to be fixed if we transform how we do things, and that's why you can see the whole way through the consultation document it talks about transformation being key.
Deborah Erskine.
Speaker, and I thank the First and Deputy First Minister for their statement and their answers so far, and I welcome the programme for government in the face of many challenges that are facing the Executive. One such issue is investment in our wastewater treatment, and I welcome that contained within the document there are references about creating better infrastructure. However, some of the funding for capital works relating to wastewater treatment will fall under the investment strategy. So can the Minister point to what work is actively taking place on this so that it can tie in with the core missions of the programme for government?
Deputy First Minister.
Member for a very important question. We're all very conscious of the importance of the investment in wastewater sewage and the impact that that is having right across in terms of planning applications, in terms of environmental issues in relation to Lough Neagh, for example. So it is critically important. It's one of the most urgent issues that we are facing. We're also acutely aware, and we've discussed this on a number of occasions in the Executive, about how that is impacting on a number, and this potential impact on a number of these priorities, not least in terms of social and affordable and sustainable housing, but in relation to growing our economy and other connected issues, particularly environmental. So yes, the member is absolutely right that the primary vehicle for that will be the investment strategy for Northern Ireland. We are currently working on that, and we will want to engage, of course, with those committees, all committees, but particularly those committees like our own committee with a particular focus on infrastructure, to make sure that that long-term plan, that 10-year plus plan on capital can do what it needs to do. But of course, budget is going to be really important to that, and we know how difficult the circumstances are in that currently.
Connie Egan.
I thank the First and Deputy First Minister with meeting with the Chair of the Executive Office Committee this morning. I'm very glad to see the ending violence against women and girls as a priority. How will you make sure that all departments have input to ending violence, misogyny and abuse towards women and girls?
First Minister.
Thank you, and I appreciate the ongoing emphasis that the member puts on this area alongside other colleagues. And I'm also very pleased to say that hopefully over the coming days, hopefully next week, we'll be able to announce our strategy to end violence against women and girls, because the Executive has also signed off on that piece of work last week. And I think that, as the member rightly points out, this is a whole of society problem that we have, and we must do everything we can to end violence against women and girls, and particularly after the summer that's been, and 3 more women have tragically lost their lives. So I'm delighted to be able to say a lot more about that, hopefully next week, in terms of presenting our strategy for ending violence against women and girls.
Nicola Brogan.
And I thank the First and Deputy First Minister for their statement today. I know that the four-party Executive has taken significant action since coming to office on matters around the public sector pay award and the interim fiscal framework, and you've made progress on the budget and have agreed a legislative programme. Building on the work to date, can the Deputy First Minister detail what is in the draft programme for government, please?
Deputy First Minister.
So as the Deputy First Minister has set out, we have focused on 9 priorities, and we think that's really, really important because this is a different mandate. It is a shortened mandate, and it's also a mandate which is marred with financial challenges, not least because of austerity over the last 14 years. So with those 2 main challenges in mind, it was important that we tried to reimagine or looked at the programme for government in a different way. And that's why we focused very clearly on those 9 key objectives. And those are the things, it's not an exhaustive list. I would say to everybody, that's a list that actually the executive is collectively committed to working together on and ensuring that we have delivery upon. But outside of that, all other departments will also have their own areas of responsibility, their own areas of work, which will obviously carry on. But this new approach, I think, reflects the reality of the challenging situation that we face in terms of the finances. But equally alongside that, the document, I hope, paints to hope, because there are opportunities. There are opportunities with growing our economy. There are opportunities with attracting trade. There are opportunities with creating more and better paid jobs. There are opportunities with regional balance. There are opportunities right out there in which we can lift everybody in society up. And those are the things that we're going to very much focus on. That's why I say that everybody has a stake in what is being set out here today.
Brian Kingston.
Speaker, and I thank the First Minister and Deputy First Minister for their answers so far. I do indeed welcome the publication of the draft programme for government and the fact that all 4 parties on the Executive have signed up to it. It is important now that the Executive engages with the public during the consultation stage. I know we've heard some of that detail, but can we hear more detail about how the Executive intends to carry out that consultation?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Yes, as indicated, it is critically important that we do listen to people. Ultimately, we want to deliver, and what we want to deliver will impact on all throughout Northern Ireland, particularly in terms of those big issues such as health care reform, but also in relation to, for example, the affordable childcare strategy, tackling the big issues within education, particularly in relation to special educational needs. So these are issues that impact on so many people out throughout Northern Ireland. We want and we must listen, and therefore there will be a range of different methods to try to gather those views. There will be an online process. There will be the ability to be able to write in and give your views, but we will also be going out as an executive in terms of engaging with people through workshops and roadshows right throughout outside of Belfast as well as within, to really listen to people on a sectoral basis as to the issues that they want to see reflected in this programme for government.
Robbie Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't want the First and Deputy First Minister to be fighting over answering mine like you did for Ms Egan's question, but and I don't want to be negative, but I am going to be honest, if that's okay. So it's really good that you've brought this programme for government draft to us and out for discussion. But in reality, the 2 things that have affected the people in Northern Ireland the most over this last 8 years has been the lack of funding and political abstentionism. So could you update maybe in terms of, and you've got off to a great start in terms of First and Deputy First Minister, but the timeline of delivery will require stable government that is here when big decisions need to be made. There'll be a commitment from the Executive Office that will be the case for this next, not just this mandate, but into the next one.
Mr. Minister.
And I apologise, the Deputy First Minister, I didn't realise I answered 2 questions in a row, but we're just supposed to alternate. But anyway, I will take your question. We're launching a draft programme for government. It doesn't get more real than that. This is what we're here to do. We're here to be in government together, the 4 parties of the Executive. We've set out very real and meaningful plans that we think will make a difference to people's lives. We're focused on prosperity and lifting everybody up. And I think that's what the public want to see. They want political leaders to work together. They want us to find solutions to the big problems of today. And that's what we think that we have cracked in the programme for government insofar as it sets out our focus on those immediate priorities. But it also allows us to build for the future, which I think is important. So we're setting very firm foundations around how we can move forward. And obviously to make a lot of this work is going to be the whole financial situation and getting that right. And we're determined, again, we're at one in terms of a 4-party executive in fighting the good fight for properly funded public services here. It's not special treatment. It's actually fair and what people are entitled to. And we're going to engage with the Labour government continuously in terms of trying to get to that right juncture.
Declan Tierney.
Agus going buíochas leis na Harry as ochtan ráiteas a chuir fáil Tróna. The ministers will understand that public services here have been underfunded and below need for a significant number of years as a result of successive decisions by British governments. The early indications are that this Labour administration may well be prioritising austerity over the resilience of public services. In case that agam or of Marshindo, do you believe that we have sufficient resources to deliver this programme for government?
I thank the member for his question. This executive has a determination to deliver. We've set out our draft plan, trying to identify what we believe matters most to people right throughout Northern Ireland. But the ability to deliver is fundamentally based on resources and the budget that we have as well. We can do some things if we have a more limited budget, but of course we can do more to improve lives if we have got a better budget. We have stepped up and we've said to the UK Government that we do have a determination to have a sustainable budget. We have a determination to be sensible and to have a sensible approach in terms of our budget. But we do require what we need in order to run our public services. And up until this point, our budget has really struggled. I think we can see that across all, and we hear from all of the ministers in terms of the resource required for health, for education. Just recent, an example of that with the winter fuel payment and the impact of that decision by this Labour government on those who are very often are the least capable of being able to afford to heat their homes. So look, we have serious concerns. I do, though, welcome the fact that we will be meeting with the Chancellor this Thursday, along with the Finance Minister, and we will be raising the sustainable and proper funding for Northern Ireland. That is what people need, that is what people deserve here, and we will certainly be upfront and be determined in terms of making that case to the Treasury and to the Chancellor. And we will also be raising issues, for example, such as the winter fuel payment decision.
Call on Diane Dodds.
Thank you. And thank you to the First and Deputy First Minister for answering questions and for the production of a programme for government. It is an important way forward. I also want to welcome the focus on health waiting lists. I don't know of any constituency office and area that we represent that will not be impacted by this fundamental issue. The previous speakers spoke to health waiting lists in terms of funding, but does the First Minister also recognise that there are structural problems and inequalities within the health service that will require huge decisions of this executive and indeed the wider Assembly? And will the First Minister tell this House whether or not the Health Minister so far has presented his plan for the transformation of health services to the Executive, and if not, will the First Minister guarantee the House that this will be a priority for the Executive?
First Minister.
Yes, I can guarantee that it is a priority, and that's why it's one of the 9 priorities that we've identified. I think collectively, as you say, we all have constituents who are really in dire situation, dire straits, waiting to get into the health service, being forced to beg, borrow and steal sometimes to get private health care, and that's not acceptable. We also know many constituents that are sitting day and daily, can't get access to their GP. It's not acceptable and it's not good enough. So what we need to all focus on collectively is transformation. So how do we support primary care? How do we invest up front in primary care? How do we bring care closer to families? How do we take the pressure from the acute end into that frontline investment? And we need to see very concrete plans. So I think what we need to see develop from the work that's been done to date, because the Department of Health have published an elective care framework, there actually has been some marginal improvements, albeit we're still in such a dire situation, it's kind of hard to speak up that. So I think what we'll see in the aftermath of the programme for government being consulted upon are even more concrete plans coming forward from health, and we're going to work with them on that. I think that's vitally important, because we need to get waiting lists down, and we need to stop the wastage in our health service. We know that we have first-class healthcare and social care workers working in our system day and night under huge pressure. We've invested in them in terms of public sector pay, one of the first things that the Executive was able to do. But outside of that, I think what we need to see is real systems change, complete restructuring of the health service, so that we can start to tackle health inequality. So I think there's a whole raft of things that need to happen: the transformation, the investment in the health service, programmes to actually bring down waiting times for people, improving people's life outcomes, health outcomes is crucially important. And I do welcome the fact that the Health Minister has brought forward some initial plans around how he's going to develop more work around tackling health inequalities. There's a lot to do there, but it is a priority for us, and I can assure you that when we get to the end of the programme for government, we need to be looking at those actual how that looks like in terms of what it looks like in terms of waiting lists over year 1, year 2 and year 3.
Call on John Blair.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. I thank the First Minister and Deputy First Minister for the statement today, in particular for the reference to, and I quote, the evident biodiversity crisis as seen at Loch Ness. It seems clear to me, Deputy Speaker, that a meaningful environmental improvement plan is a crucial part of tackling the environmental and ecological and biodiversity crises. My understanding is that the DAERA Minister brought an environmental improvement plan to the Executive in March, just weeks actually after his appointment. Do the First Minister and Deputy First Minister agree with me that the publication of that environmental improvement plan is now urgently, as well as legally, required as part of the actions flowing from this programme for government?
Deputy First Minister.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Of course, the issue of executive business is confidential. However, I do agree with the member that, of course, having an environmental improvement plan is important. I welcome the fact that we were able to produce and agree in the executive the Loch Ness plan in terms of looking at some of those urgent issues. But on the wider picture in terms of the programme for government, I welcome the fact that this is a priority action, because we know that it is having a very detrimental impact. We only have to look at Loch Ness. We know the importance of Loch Ness, we know the importance of those environmental aspects, but of course it is linked to other policies. There's no doubt in terms of Loch Ness, for example, the water and sewage and waste issue is critical. We have to resolve those, and that will require investment. It is not going to be an easy fix, we know that, but I think that there is that determination across all 4 parties of the executive to find workable solutions. We have a fantastic farming community here in Northern Ireland. We've got excellent agri-food products, and of course we want to work. I think there is an apprehension sometimes from the farming sector that there will be a disproportionate burden put on farming and agriculture in relation to environmental actions, but we need to make sure that in fact that is not the case, that there is a fair and proportionate approach. And we know, for example, as I've said, wastewater, sewage and our water infrastructure is a critical aspect of that as well, which we must tackle.
Thank you. Colin McGrath.
Speaker, the Minister said in her statement that the Executive makes no apology for being ambitious. But given that there is no new funding being announced for our health service and our Department of Health continues to run at a deficit, will you at least apologise to the hundreds of thousands of people that are languishing on waiting lists, who will have been looking to this statement today for some hope, but don't see any concrete actions, just some warm words?
First Minister.
Well, I just don't agree. So, it's as simple as that. What I would say to the people that are on their waiting lists, that have been waiting for a long time to get treatment, that we're going to do absolutely everything that we can to help them get their treatment. We're going to work night and day to try to fix our health service that's been put on its knees by a Tory austerity agenda for over 14 years. So, and the member knows that rightly. That would be why his party actually signed up to the cross-party memo which we sent when we first reformed the executive. This place has been underfunded, and we need to turn that picture. We're determined as the 4-party executive to actually make that happen. I'm glad that we will go to the Treasury again this week. We'll continue our engagements. We've been able to make some progress. But we're determined to fight the fight for good finances here. We're going to determine to fight for a fair funding model, and we're going to determine to fight for investment in our health service, because on one hand, people are languishing on waiting lists. At the same time, the health service which they depend on has been starved because of deliberate policy set in London. That's not acceptable. But we are going to continue to make the case for proper funding so that we can invest in our health service. And I'm quite sure that if you're sitting at home and you're waiting on a waiting list for a considerable period of time, what you want to know is, what's the solution? When am I going to get my appointment? How's it going to be fixed? When is our health service going to be able to respond to individuals' needs? That's what we're going to try to deliver.
Colin Cathy Mason.
I thank the First and Deputy First Ministers for their statement and their answers so far. But do you agree with me that much more must be done to make childcare provision more accessible and affordable?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the member for her important question. Childcare has been a priority right from day one. I was really pleased that we were able to get childcare on the very first executive meeting because of its urgency and its importance. We know that the cost of childcare is putting a huge burden on families, but I really welcome, and the feedback that I have got is that many thousands of families have received their first payment through that immediate £25 million childcare fund that we were able to secure, and our Education Minister, Paul Givan, has been able to roll out. It doesn't go far enough, but it does make a difference, and that's a positive difference to those really hard-pressed budgets. It is a priority issue. I look forward to the significant amount of work that will be completed in order to bring forward the substantive strategy. But I want, in the remainder of this mandate, for this to be an absolutely key, strategic, not just action, but success story of this executive. Again, it does come back to the budget challenges that we have. We can only do what we can do with the budget that we can get, but we will make the best possible case that we can for additional resources by looking at what we have to prioritise that to support those hard-working families.
Michelle Guy.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister and First Minister, for your statement. It's positive to see the draft programme for government being published today, and we look forward to engaging more on implementation in the months and years ahead. Alliance has been leading the way on childcare policy in recent years, and we're pleased to see the rollout of interim measures this summer, including the subsidy scheme. And as a mother who is effectively returning to the workplace full-time today, having taken time out to be part-time when my kids were small, due in no small part to the challenge of childcare, I'm really pleased to see that childcare has been given the profile that it deserves by being included in the priorities of the draft programme for government today. So I want to ask, as part of the development of a wider childcare strategy, what measures will be provided to support school-aged childcare? Thank you.
First Minister.
Thank you to the member, and welcome to the Assembly. I look forward to working with you, and I think we share the same passion which many in the House do in terms of trying to get this one right. And I think that childcare has been, as the Deputy First Minister said, has been our priority from day one, and I'm really pleased with the advances that we've been able to make, and I do think they're making a tangible difference out there, and it's across a whole range of things. But I think that we've only got going in that first 7 months in terms of what we've been able to achieve, and in that first period, I was just reflecting on this, we've been able to secure £9 million for the 15% childcare subsidy, and I know this is all for preschool age, so we've work to do in terms of trying to build it up. But we've been able to also support £7 million to go towards supporting children who are facing disadvantage, £2 million towards childcare providers, because we need our childcare providers to stay in place, regardless of what age the child is, to be able to provide the care. And we obviously made moves towards the universal preschool education programme being expanded to give up to 22.5 hours for children aged 3 to 4. And that's just the start of us getting going. And then there's a whole raft of work underneath all of that, which is around gathering the evidence, working with the sector. And I think that in terms of this being identified as one of our priorities, we're only going to keep building on that, and we need to move it then beyond that initial cohort and the younger children into the school-aged children, because that's also a burden. But I believe that the biggest burden for families right now in terms of childcare would be that preschool age. That's why we've started there, but we absolutely have to walk to the end of the journey and the end of the road. As I said, as a granny, I understand this problem in my own family very acutely, so I just want us to be able to say to families out there, we are going to try to support you through the childcare journey. We know how expensive it is, and we're trying to make sure we get to a point where we actually support the childcare provider to stay in place, that they in turn pass on a more affordable childcare cost to the family, and then it allows more people to stay in work. So that's a win-win for everybody. That's a circular economy investment there, and certainly something that we are determined to keep building upon.
Declan McAleer, please.
And I thank the Deputy First Minister for the launch of the draft PFG. Does the Ministers agree that the regional balance must be a central component of the programme for government?
Deputy First Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the member for his question. Absolutely. Like, we want to deliver not just for people who live in Belfast or around Belfast, we want to deliver for everyone, no matter where you live in Northern Ireland. We also recognise that if we're going to grow our economy, if we're going to have those good jobs, that foreign direct investment, if we're going to encourage companies to expand, to import, to do what we needed to do to have that robust, thriving, prosperous future, for Northern Ireland, then that means that that has to be right throughout Northern Ireland. There are a number of references in the draft programme for government. I hope that the member has seen those too, that focus on addressing regional disparities, but also to ensure that these programmes, as they roll out at least equally across, but also that we address the very particular issues facing our community, should they be rural communities or urban communities, and no matter where you are. So I look forward to engaging with those roadshows, and no doubt that those issues will come up as we get out and about, but we look forward to engaging with people about how best we can serve them in that way.
Thank you, and thank you, First Minister and Deputy First Minister, for your statement today. And just leading on from the previous question about regional balance and regional inequality, it needs to end, and the devastating impact of regional inequality is happening right before our very eyes. What steps will you be taking to ensure that regional balance is a priority for every single department? But more importantly, how will you measure it?
First Minister, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to build on the previous answer, I mean, you can see right through the document it's peppered in terms of regional balance, because the prosperity agenda is for everybody, regardless of where you live. So it's really, really important that we get that right. I think when we reflect on the economic vision which the Economy Minister has set out, where he talks about the 4 priorities, one of which is regional balance. One is making sure that we share the prosperity, that we attract investment into areas outside of the Greater Belfast area, as well as the Belfast area. I think it's really, really important when you reflect on increasing productivity in terms of the economic strategy. That's about how do we attract more jobs, good paid jobs, again, that will lift people up. So I'm very confident in terms of the references to the McGee Task Force. Again, that's about regional balance, that's about ensuring university provision in the North West. So right across the document, I think you'll see a very strong and healthy commitment across all departments to regional balance, because this plan is about everybody. It's about lifting everybody up, and it needs to be fair, it needs to be equitable, and it needs to be shared, and everybody needs to enjoy in the growth. So I think that the member, whenever you get a chance to properly reflect on it, you'll be able to see that throughout the document, and no doubt as part of our roadshows and being out and about, we certainly will make sure that we are out in all arts and parts, engaging with people and making sure that we're getting that view from people in urban versus rural areas, that we need to hear that view from everybody in terms of how they feel about this. But I'm very confident in terms of the regional balance commitment.
Shanna Holland, please.
Speaker, and thank you First and Deputy First Ministers for the release of this draft programme for government. I'm fully aware that not every issue can be a priority, but I can't help be disappointed that addressing the crippling levels of poverty experienced by more and more people in Northern Ireland was not made a priority, especially given how cross-cutting the issue of poverty is, and the cost of not addressing our levels of poverty here is putting even more pressure on our financial position. So from first glance, I can see a fuel poverty strategy expected in 2025, but I can't seem to see a specific executive-led anti-poverty strategy. So my question is, what are the key actions in this plan that will tackle issues at the heart of poverty in our societies? Thank you.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thank the member for her question. Of course, tackling poverty is important. You'll see throughout the programme for government we have that aspiration to ensure that everyone can reach their full potential, and that must of course mean supporting tackling those issues of poverty, should that be financial poverty or right through, for example, to educational underachievement. I welcome the actions we've taken so far, £20 million towards tackling educational underachievement, but also that we felt it was really important that we have within this programme for government key priorities tackling where those inequalities are most acutely felt. So, for example, health inequalities in relation to waiting lists and ill health. We know that far more people of lower incomes come out with chronic illnesses in their early 50s, of worse health outcomes. I welcome, I'm standing right beside the Communities Minister, and I'm sure he's heard your question loud and clear. We have a statutory responsibility and obligation to bring forward the anti-poverty strategy. I know that he is actively working on that, and that will align with some of the key priorities identified in the programme for government as well. We have a determination, as I've said, to try to ensure that, as the First Minister has indicated, that everyone is lifted up, and by tackling things like affordable and social housing, by tackling waiting lists, supporting hard-pressed families with affordable childcare, these growing the economy and providing those better jobs for people, these are all ways to lift people out of poverty, and that is what we need to do collectively as an executive.
Colin Mark Durkin.
Agad Elias Sean Corlia agus Priahis Leshna Kionaira for Hanya Arachis and Clar Rialtas Nua. I welcome the publication of this document and look forward to consultation on it. And while the draft document may be a wee bit light in detail, it does identify most of our biggest problem and demonstrates an ambition to improve in these areas. In terms of the environment, primacy seems to have been given to Lough Neagh, which I understand. But could I ask for, and indeed push for, the inclusion of a remediation programme for Maboy, a legal dump, to be at the heart of this as well? This is a major issue, not just for our environment, but also for the economic development of the North West.
First Minister.
Thanks for that, and I can say that Lough Neagh has been given a particular focus given the scale of the challenges that we face there, and rightly so. But alongside that, there are a number of other actions in the document around climate action, publishing our first climate action plan, for example, which obviously will be a welcome development. The environmental improvement plan that someone mentioned earlier needs to be published and got out, because that will very much, I think, complement what we're trying to do with the Lough Neagh strategy. We want to have an integrated approach to water quality. We want to review the energy strategy in 2025. We need a just transition committee. The raft of things that are there in terms of the climate and energy area are quite strong. I can say that I'm very conscious of the fact that in terms of Mavoy, that the Minister himself is actually looking at that area, and we did actually reflect on it last week, but I'm quite sure he'll have something more to say about that in the coming days, but I'll not steal his thunder today.
Colin Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the First and Deputy First Ministers for bringing the draft programme for government to the Assembly today. I would like to highlight my welcome for the commitment to supporting children with special educational needs in the draft PFG. But with that in mind, I wanted to ask if you could outline how you're going to ensure that the vital collaboration that is needed between departments will be rolled out as part of this programme for government to ensure that education, health, economy genuinely work together in a way that is transformative and not tokenistic or tick box.
First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thank the member for his question. We know even in the last week or so how challenging the issue of special educational needs and parents and children getting the need and support that they both deserve, but absolutely that they need in a timely way can be. So of course, like the issue of special education needs, you know, the statistics are stark about this. From 17-18 to this financial year, there's been a growth of some 147% in terms of the demand. That of course puts pressure on supply, and supply hasn't caught up with that trajectory of demand that is required. So look, big challenges in this area. That's why it's a priority. That's why we pulled it out. We know when we listen to so many parents and young people going through a very difficult circumstance. But I think your question actually pertains more than to the transformation and reform piece, because that is all about how do we work better to tackle these big issues. That's a critical piece in terms of the process that we have. We haven't always been the best at delivering what it is that we want to deliver. And we can only look, particularly in terms of our capital projects, at where there is delay, where something isn't delivered, even though that there is a collective intention and agreement to do so. That costs can increase dramatically, that the people who need those services or to use those roads or to use those facilities cannot do so. So the delivery aspect is important. This PFG for me is about delivery, delivery, delivery. That is not just about intention set out in the priorities. It is about how we do business, how we identify the priorities, how we identify the solutions, and making sure that they are rolled out in a truly cross-departmental collaborative way, and in a way that meets the outcomes, and that we're measuring progress against that, but meeting the outcomes that this executive has the ambition to do.
Colin Timothy Gaston.
From the brief opportunity that we've been afforded to consider the document, it would appear to me that there's no mention of either the protocol or the Windsor framework. We cannot claim to be securing our economic future while implementing a border which cuts us off from the rest of our union and indeed the sixth biggest economy in the world. So my question to the Minister is this. Stormont came back on the basis because Jeffrey Donaldson told the unionist people there would be zero checks and zero paperwork when it came to trading between GB and Northern Ireland. That hasn't happened. What in this document aims to deliver those promises that allowed Stormont to return?
First Minister.
Well, I can assure you this is an executive document, so it's owned by the 4 parties of the executive, and I know you're relatively new to the chamber, Mr Gaston, but you have 8 weeks now to consider the document, and you'll be able to respond in much more detail than you get the opportunity to do today. Look, whenever you look at the document, it talks about our economy, it talks about growing our economy, it talks about the fact that we have a unique selling point, it talks about us reaching for that opportunity, it talks about us creating jobs, more jobs, better paid jobs, it talks about regional balance. These are all really positive things that we must reach for, because if we're going to lift everybody up in society and create opportunity for everybody, then it's important that we grow our economy, that we don't just focus on the challenges which we have, which of course there are many, but there are much more opportunities that we have, and the document itself refers to the fact that we need to reach for those opportunities and grab them on behalf of the people that we all collectively serve.
I call on Jerry Carroll.
Minister, despite today's opening of the Grand Central Station in Belfast, government here still spend the lowest across these islands on public transport, hundreds less per head compared to other regions on these islands. The First Minister said it needed to be open and transparent. Minister, I'd ask you and the Executive to be open and transparent. Will you commit to funding public transport to fund that gap?
Deputy First Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Really important issue, the affordability of public transport. It's critical for so many people, particularly those who don't drive. But of course, in terms of trying to encourage people to use more sustainable transport, the cost of that is a big factor. It really is an issue that will be focused on more in the investment strategy for Northern Ireland in terms of the investment in our public infrastructure and our public transport. So there will be more detail in relation to that to come forward, and I look forward to engaging with him on that. But yes, ideally, of course, you would want our public transport to be more affordable and to bring those costs back and those costs down. But there is the issue of sustainability at the moment, and this comes back to the issue around budget and the case that we will be making to the Chancellor this Thursday around the budget. As indicated, we want to deliver. I believe that this programme for government has ambition. But that ambition can only be realised if we have the right resources, if we have the right funding and the right budget to do so. We of course will try our best to work within the budget that we have in order to support families right throughout Northern Ireland. But we are limited to what we can do with the budget that we are given. But we will, as I said, be unceasing in making that strong case to ensure that Northern Ireland gets the fair funding it deserves.
Call on Claire Sugden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. First Ministers, I appreciate that we now have a draft programme for government. However, I remain very disappointed that there is no mention of older people. The recent census said that we are an ageing population, which in itself will determine the future of our public services, yet we have not considered this in how we move forward. So why was this very obvious group overlooked in the draft programme?
First Minister.
Thanks to the member, and I know the member is very passionate about this issue, but that's why we're asking you to engage with the programme for government, help shape the final version. I mean, I can say to you that everything that's littered across the 9 priorities will affect older people. You know, everything that we're trying to do will affect older people, it'll affect younger people, so a lot of these issues and priorities are very much cross-cutting. If we need to do something more in terms of referencing older people in particular, then let's have that conversation. Let's try to shape the end result, but certainly the whole of the 9 priorities, absolutely, there's not a person that won't be impacted by, particularly in an older population, they'll be impacted by those issues. But you're right, we have an ageing demographic, we need to understand that, and we need to have public services that can respond to that and have the right supports in place. So I'm happy to engage the member on that issue.
I call on Justin McDonald.
First Minister, your programme for government states sport can be life-changing and has the potential to build strong relationships across communities. This I agree with. You also reference making progress on Casement Park's redevelopments. Wonderful. In your programme for government statements, you say you make no apology for being ambitious. Will you demonstrate your intent? Will you demonstrate your ambition by committing to the completion of Casement Park in time for Euro 2028, a new flagship project, a new beacon of hope, reconciliation and prosperity for Belfast and the North and this island?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thank the member for his question. As I've said already, I'm standing beside the Communities Minister who has primary responsibility for this issue. But of course, as somebody who jointly leads the Executive along with the First Minister, our duty first and foremost is to try to ensure that what we do has that key at the heart of it, the issues of affordability, of deliverability, of value for money. That is of course a public duty that we have to discharge. But I absolutely agree with the member that sport is something that can change lives for the better. We want to support our amazing sporting clubs right throughout Northern Ireland, not just in terms of football but across so many other sports as well. I know that from speaking even in my own constituency, many of them are crying out for much needed funds, and I welcome the fact that the Communities Minister has announced the Football Support Fund and that he will be doing his best to go further in terms of that support and that vital need to encourage that community. So many volunteers, so many young people involved in sport, the benefits of that in terms of health, in terms of mental health, in terms of building that sense of community. So I absolutely recognise the value of sport, and I welcome the fact that it's referenced in this document. But as I've said, the key issues of deliverability, affordability and value for money will always be at the heart of what we do in the Executive.
Ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes questions on the statement. Therefore, as the next item on the business of the order paper is question time, I therefore propose by leave of the Assembly to suspend the sitting until 2 p.m. The sitting is by leave suspended.